Welcome to the Newtown Big Dreams podcast, an interview-style talk show that's your gateway to the fabulous and fascinating people who relocated to start a new life. Whether you're new to our podcast or your city, our fellow neighbors from across Canada, North America, and the entire English-speaking world share their stories of reaching new horizons and big dreams. So sit back and relax as we navigate in-depth and intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, executives, creatives, and anyone who can share their story about their Newtown big dreams. And now, here's your host, Luke J. Menkes.
So Nathan, thanks for coming in on a Sunday. I know you're extremely busy even on a Sunday. And we had to adjust the schedule a couple times, but that's great. Sunday works great for me, so I really appreciate it. You came to Kelowna in 2012. Tell us the story of how you got to Kelowna.
Well, thanks for having me, Luke.
You're welcome.
So I moved here for a couple of reasons. I have an auntie and a couple of cousins here in town. So that was kind of a nice bonus, but really I came here with the intention to study audio engineering at a local digital arts school. It's called Center for Arts and Technology.
Okay.
So I took the audio engineering course. It was a year and a half. And my dream at the time was to work in a studio and be around musicians all the time. For anyone who's worked around musicians, you kind of need to figure out early on if it's going to be like a long-term thing or if this is going to be a phase that you're passing through. Because it really takes a lot to deal with some of the madness. They
have very different personalities. Like you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. There's a lot of stereotypes around musicians, and there's reasons for each of them. I'd
like to get into some of that for sure. So just going back now, you had your aunt and
some couple cousins with their family. One of them moved away. He's now a welder a little bit further east over in the mountains in the Kootenays.
Okay. So where did you come from?
So I was born in Calgary, and at the time my family lived up in Northwest Territories. I'm the youngest of four, and my dad was an oil engineer. He wanted overseas experience, so we actually moved to Kuwait in the Middle East when I was 3. It was supposed to be for a short time. 16 years later, I moved back here.
Right. So in 2012, you already knew people here. You probably visited Kelowna many times.
Once.
Just once. Wow.
Once in Kelowna. Twice in Kelowna. To see the same family that was here in town.
I see. And it's really the school, though, that drew you here.
The school was recommended to me. I didn't actually know anything about the school. I looked up a couple things online, and of course, everything looks better online. So
right.
Like, oh, that looks awesome. Let's go there.
Right.
So it was not a very long decision-making process. I applied, I got into it, and we drove over here from Calgary after we flew back one summer, and then I just lived here.
Awesome. So, and you decided to stay. So you finished your course?
Yes and no. So the course was a year and a half. So I started in October and I finished end of March, a year and a half later.
This is like 2012.
This is now 2014 when I finished.
Oh, okay.
And about a month after that, I was during the course. I kind of I got to know some people in the local live event industry. So they do stage and lighting and video and sound and all that kind of stuff. And I really wanted to do just the sound mixing for bands for live stuff because actually, before I went to school, I'd had a lot of experience volunteering in churches. Yeah. So I had no idea what I was doing, but I had a lot of time on a board and touching the microphones. So I was very familiar with it, and I felt very comfortable to go out and ask some of the local production companies, hey, can I have a job here?
Right. So in a church, it's like someone come over and say, hey, turn it down a bit. Or turn it up a bit. Like it wasn't sophisticated mixing.
Not really. It's run by volunteers, so it's kind of whatever they get is what they get. Right. Sometimes someone who's really experienced volunteers, and sometimes it's someone who picked up a guitar once. And it's everything in between. So there's a lot of freedom to screw up. So it's a great place to learn.
When did you notice that you were into audio engineering?
When I realized I wasn't a good musician.
I see.
I wanted to be part of the music, but I wasn't good.
You didn't have a natural talent for playing.
No, it took me way longer to sound half as good. So I decided that I can make my friends sound better.
Interesting. It kind of reminds me of sports a little bit. Like some of the best coaches of all time were not the best players, but they had a brain for it. They understood, how to make other people better players. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of interesting. So, so you had a lot of friends, I guess, growing up that were musicians?
A few. There was, in the Middle East, there's not a lot of, well, specifically in Kuwait where I lived, there's not a lot of places to play. So mostly it's just bedroom musicians.
I see.
Like there's no venues.
Is it
no
illegal?
Music industry. It's not that it's not legal, it's just that there's no support for it. Like there's no one who will give you a venue for a music event.
So if you held an event, like maybe nobody would show up?
Probably if a bunch of people from high school and a couple from the university.
I see.
But again, like there's no promotional place for it. This would all be word of mouth. You'd have to text 20 friends or 100 friends, and they would have to text 100 friends. And unless that happens, no one's going to show up.
Do you think it's a religious thing? Or because, music seems to be pretty universal on the planet. Like you go to China, you go to,
yes and
Australia. People love music, right?
It's partly religious because in Kuwait's not the most strict place in terms of Islamic countries, but it's also not the most free either.
I see.
So it's like you can go grab a guitar and sit on the street corner and just jam songs with friends and sit down. People might look at you funny, but nothing's going to happen. Like just go hang out, have fun.
Right.
But also there's not a lot of money in it, and it's a very much of a business country. Like, there's a lot of people that come there to work for a lot of money. And so why would they back it and give you a bunch of time if there's no money in it?
Right.
So it's like, all right, there's not a lot of people who are musicians.
Right.
Definition of a musician is you spend $5,000 on equipment. You drive for 5 hours to play a show for $50.
Right. Yeah.
And the cat's in front of the mic.
I ran live music. Yeah. So I'm probably okay because I'm in the back. I ran a live music venue in Nelson for 2 years, and my first priority when I took it over was to improve the sound. So I had a local sound engineer who's very good, but he's losing his hearing from so many concerts over the decades. But he was really good with the technical aspects of it. Like he actually took measurements of the room and figured out exactly what equipment we needed. And we got an amazing mixing board, and it was pretty cool. It's a topic that's always fascinated me. I do my own mixing for this podcast. I've used interns from your school to help, but it's a little bit tedious. And, I've got 5-6 episodes done, and the person says, oh, I'm moving back to Edmonton. Sorry, I can't help you anymore. But I really love a partner, someone who could be my co-producer, take care of the audio. I've got my eye on some equipment and, could use some advice because I think without taking a course, a lot of this is kind of trial and error. Like I know when something doesn't sound right, but I don't know why. So what are some of the things you learned in school?
So the course was very broad. It covered a lot of topics. And I'm actually very grateful for it because it's helping me with what I'm doing today. But yeah, so it kind of covered everything from audio for games to film audio, like both on set and also what they call post-production. I don't know if you knew this, but whenever you're watching a movie, more than 70% of what you hear was after the fact.
Right. So sound effects.
There is nothing recorded on set aside from dialogue.
Wow.
Nothing at all. There's no, you don't even hear the squeak of a leather jacket. Wow. There's no sound on set aside from dialogue.
Interesting.
Everything else is done.
So does the actor, in that case, have to imagine, they've got to really put themselves in the scene?
Yeah, sometimes if it's like, you're putting that coffee cup down too hard, we're going to put a little thing of neoprene underneath there, so you put it down silently on the table, and we're going to add that sound effect in afterwards. I
see.
Like, they go to the extremes where the crew sometimes will wear neoprene on the bottom of their feet so they don't make noise if they have to walk around and move things.
Right.
They go really, really far. If you're shooting in a mall, sometimes you'll have to schedule 6 months in advance for them to program the HVAC system to switch off while they're filming.
Right.
They go really far for it.
You get that ambient buzzing sound, and that's interesting. It's interesting you say about the shoes. I was watching the basketball playoffs last night. I'm not a huge basketball fan, but I'm from Toronto, so I was watching and the squeaking of the shoes is like, I can imagine on a movie set, like you couldn't film with that kind of squeak.
No, it wouldn't work.
Going on. So, what's like something that would surprise an outsider, some of the concepts that you learn in school that people don't know about. Like that fact you just told me, that 70% of the audio is in post-production. That's surprising. I mean, I would have thought that, if you're outside or, slamming a coffee cup or whatever, that's part of the original filming. You're saying it's not. What other things did you learn in school that kind of would be surprising to someone who's not in that field?
There's a lot of little things that stack up. So if you do just one of them, it's not going to change the whole thing. If you do 10 of them, all of a sudden you go from sounding like an amateur to sounding like semi-professional. There's just all kinds of little tiny things. I think one of the biggest things, and I was very surprised by this, is just using the right equipment. And by that, I mean even like the right cables sometimes make a huge difference.
Really? So what can a cable do? Like negative?
Okay, here's one thing I found really interesting. There was a guy named Chris Cleaver who used to be on the Weather Channel here in Kelowna. He teaches there. He also is, I think, still works for K93 or K93.6. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Radio station. I think he still works there. But he did he actually built a studio. Like he wired all the hundreds and
for the radio
connections.
station.
No, sorry, for the school.
Oh, for the school,
because they have a full recording studio in there.
I see.
And he was telling us a little bit about. He taught us our studio maintenance class, and so he taught us about what happens if you use the wrong cables, if you use the wrong this, if you have ground loops. So you're not an electrician by any stance, but you are able to diagnose and quickly work around bad situations. So if you've got multiple ground points, you get loops because you're creating an AM radio antenna. If you have a ground loop, you're just having 2 points to ground. The ground all connects to each other if you have equipment touching. If you have like a microphone plugged into a console and that console is plugged into a speaker, both those are in different grounds. All the ground cables loop, and that becomes an AM radio antenna. So you get this really weird hum, and it's called a ground loop. So it's just little stuff like that you walk into a venue, you think, oh, this venue sucks. It's like, no, just plug this in over there.
Right.
So it's like little tiny things. Like you're not fixing anything. You're just finding ways to work around. It's like tons of little stuff like that.
Interesting. One thing, Guy was his name, and he said one of the reasons the sound in here is harsh is because you got a very hard, it's drywall on top of concrete right behind the drum kit. It's very harsh, so what happens is we got to turn all the other instruments up to compensate, and it's a very harsh sound on your ears. So we got a big, beautiful drape, fireproof. It was right around the time there was a huge club fire down in New Hampshire, I think it was. Totally fireproof, but a big, thick, black kind of velvet drape to go behind the drum kit. And the sound was just, of the drums, was so much better. And then we could equalize the speakers, the guitar, the bass, the vocals and everything that just sounded nice and clean.
This is in the club that you had?
Yeah. So makes sense because he said, you're getting an echo off of the hard surface of the wall. But I didn't, I never learned the technical side of it.
Yeah, for the harsh, higher sounds or higher frequencies, you need porous materials to absorb them. But that won't do anything for bass. So people who put like egg cartons all over the walls
it doesn't
are doing absolutely nothing for the low end stuff. So then what you end up doing is you get rid of a lot of those high frequency echoes, but all the low frequencies stay. And now the room just has this weird hum to it.
Like a vibration,
One instructor, Henry Pjovesen, he used to have a studio out in Vernon, which is amazing the way he built it. But he taught us that the most perfect studio in the world is the average of every single living. So I'm looking around in here, you've got bookshelves and posters, you got a cat post, you got a desk, you got lamps, you got every single thing in here will reflect sound off of it in a different way. And all those reflections will mix in together. So if you go into an empty room, it sounds completely different than if you throw a bunch of furniture into it.
Right.
So that's the idea, is you want an average of a lot of different materials to get that sound better. So that's the trouble with a lot of venues, is they're very open until you throw chairs in bodies or water bags, basically.
Right.
And then they start to change the reflections of the room. It sounds different if it's empty or if it's full.
Interesting. Is, I guess, pure audio is very different than movies, and that is very different than music, live music.
Very different. Yes, it's different. It's the same topic, but it's using different tools for a different purpose. Quite often, a question will come up of, how do you do this? And my immediate ask back is, what are you trying to do?
Right.
But you could do this in all different kinds of ways. It's all depending on what you want to do with it. So if you're talking about sound for movies or for film, then it's very different. If you're talking then about audio for music or for a podcast or anything like that.
Yeah.
In a movie, it always has to sound the way it looks.
Right.
And you never want to add something in that's going to take away from the story. That's the golden rule. If it takes away from the story, it's wrong.
Right.
And that applies to everyone on set.
Makes sense. Yeah. So let's talk about this podcast then, because this is the first interview I've done in this location. So we had it in a dining room. We had it at my office up at Remax when I used to be at Remax, in my little office. This visually for me is great because I like it. I got my books here and I don't have to move all the equipment around the house. So what would be a good set of equipment? I think 2 microphones at least. Sometimes we have 2 guests at the same time, but 1 microphone per person and a good mixing board.
Yeah, ideally, there's actually some very popular devices made by Zoom called H4n. And they have 2 microphone connectors, like 2 XLR inputs. XLR is just the name for that circular 3-pin connector that most microphones use.
Yeah. And
it can record internally to an SD card, so you can go mobile, or you can connect it to your computer by USB, and you can use it like a sound interface. It also has a built-in stereo microphone on the tip, but if it's plugged into your computer, I think you can only use either those 2 or the 2 plug-in mics.
Right.
But then you can get just like a regular mic that you'd use at an event, and those are fairly directional. You can get right into them. You can be eating the mic, or you can have it a little bit further away. You can just turn it up, and it sounds great. Yeah, those work really well. Cool.
Because I found like sharing this mic, I have to turn it up quite a bit, and then it does pick up. It sounds a little bit hollow. And then the students, they help me, so they adjust the EQ afterwards to take out some of that kind of hollow sound. But I'm told that it's always better to record better than try to fix after. Is that true?
Oh, totally. Like if you imagine getting nice clean 2x4s to build a house with, versus ones that have like chips and holes and whatnot, you're trying to fill that all in with putty. Like it's like trying to fill it in after you've already made the plank of wood. Right. It's not going to be as strong or as sturdy or hold up as well. So actually, the way that this is set up right now, there's what's called a rejection point, which is right where you're sitting. If you have a top-down view, this is called a cardioid mic.
Right.
So it kind of looks like a heart shape with like the little notch at the back.
Right.
So it's picking up in front of it, and the rejection point is behind. So
and it is omnidirectional.
Oh, is this?
You can see here. It's got those, and then the setting, so 3 makes it omni.
Okay.
So
then there would be a cardioid and omni, and potentially another setting as well.
Yeah.
With those cardioid mics, rather than pointing them at the source, you actually want to try and point the rejection at the loudest thing in the room.
Oh,
so
interesting.
It helps. It sounds a bit counterintuitive, but it's like rather than what's the best thing, it's like trying to get rid of the worst thing.
I see.
And it helps.
Cool. Well, if I can get some equipment, I'm going to have you come in and help me consult. So what are you working on now?
Right now, I have a few things going on. I tend to be more busy than I should be. It's a bad habit. I keep on saying yes to things. I'm learning how to say no to more and more things so that I can say yes to the things I really care about.
Yes.
Yes. It's not yesterday. 2 days ago and today, I'm working on a indie film set.
Nice.
And I got a call from a friend of mine who is on the set. It's an indie film, not a very big crew, but it's a new world for me. Usually I am on like a 1 or 2 man crew, sometimes 3. I work with Curtis Allen at Solid Rock Video. And it's
what kind of videos does he do?
We do mostly corporate and documentaries.
Okay.
So 2 weeks ago, we actually finished the shooting for a new airline that's being brought in through Kelowna Airport called Swoop.
Cool.
And so we got the airport manager and a couple of the staff to help us move some planes around.
Right.
And shoot the new ad, which was a ton of fun.
Nice.
So it's very fast paced. Go, go, go. We got to move all the stuff here, move all the stuff there. And Like I'm scurrying around set, getting stuff in place, trying to make him do as little work as possible so he can talk with them and get a shot set up. And I'm trying to anticipate like what are all the things I can do. And now today, I will be only touching certain equipment.
I see.
So I'm not going to be touching the camera. I'm not going to be talking to the actresses. I'm not going to be touching the food unless I'm eating. Like I only do my department. That is all.
Which is audio.
No. So my department is called the grip department. This is my first time doing this. So the grip department is mounting anything that has to do with lighting isn't a light.
Okay,
so like putting up a bounce, putting up a negative fill, like a big 4x4 square metal frame with like black canvas.
Mm-hmm.
We actually built some tents around windows, some big blacked out tents to get rid of all the light leaks, and then put a small light down at the bottom with a moon colored gel on it. So it simulated nighttime, even though it was 12 o'clock in the morning.
I see.
Or not 12 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
So we designed all the tents, we set them up, we clamped all the stuff down so that the electric department or the gaffer, you have strange names on film sets, so he can come in and set up his light the way you want it.
Right.
So
So what's the difference between a grip and a gaffer?
I'm still learning this stuff. From what it sounds like, the gaffer is the guy who is in charge of lights.
Okay.
Like he'll put them in place. He'll connect them.
Right.
And then the grips will set up the stands and the light goes on, put the sandbags down and cover up anything with duve or like black wrap or anything like that to kind of get rid of light, or if they need to have like some gobos like spun in front of a light to simulate like cars, like so they'll have like a stationary car, you need to have like street lights going up top. Maybe some guy like waving something in front of a light to simulate passing overhead street lights.
Right. And it's generally small crews that you're working with.
This is the biggest I've worked with. Like this is a new thing for me. I suddenly got the call 3 nights ago. Like, hey, what are you doing the next 4 days?
Right.
And I'm like, well, I'm not very busy, so I have this day and this day. And so 2 nights ago we finished at 2:30, and today we're probably going to be finishing around 4 or 5.
Right. Is it sort of like construction? Like in construction, certain people need to have a license. Like an electrician has to have a license. A plumber has to have a license. But then we got all these other people, and it's like, well, do you know how to do this? Yeah, okay, go. And you don't have to have a license for most of it.
It's very structured. So if there's a big enough set and you need to have like a trailer generator, you need a Genny op.
Right.
And that Genny op has all of his tickets and everything.
Yeah, he's got
so
an
certain
electrician.
people are the ones that touch certain things.
Right.
So we actually had guns on set.
Uh-huh.
And so there was a guy who was there to look after the guns.
Wow.
And no one else. That's all he did. He looked after the guns.
Right.
So, okay. Because they needed to have an actual shell fire out of it on camera.
Yeah.
So we needed a real gun.
And he's got to have a license to have guns.
Oh, yeah. He's totally up to par to have all
Yeah.
that stuff and look after it.
But a grip or a gaffer, there's no licensing for that, is there?
Not that I know of. Not in my case, I'm the very, very bottom of the totem pole. Because I was asked like the day before.
Right.
It's like, hey, do you want to come on set? I'm like, sure. I'd
Right.
love to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I basically am a monkey on set.
Interesting. Well, it's going to be a great experience. So what are your plans for the future? Where do you hope to take this? Do you want to have your own studio, your own production company? Are you more into music or movies, or what do you think?
So I had quite a stint with audio. I'm going to just skip back a little bit right after I graduated. I graduated back in 2014, and I met a guy who used to work on cruise ships. So I started asking him some questions. 3 months later, I was flying out to my first cruise ship.
Right.
I worked on a cruise ship for a year and a half.
And what did you do?
I was a sound engineer in the ice rink and then in the theater.
Wow.
There was a 60-foot by 40-foot ice rink. They'd have ice shows in the middle of the ocean in Southeast Asia.
Very cool.
I did that for a while, and then I moved back here, and I was in a production company for a while, and I started to shoot some videos on the side, and I discovered I really liked it. And I wasn't sure what it was I liked about it. And last summer was my first summer doing a few wedding videos. And I really enjoyed them as well. I wasn't sure what it was, but now I've figured out it's all about stories. So
storytelling.
Storytelling is what I like doing.
Nice. So could you see yourself actually writing documentary or movie scripts?
I don't know if that's my strength right now. I haven't really exercised that muscle too much. I don't think that I'm bad at it. I think I'm definitely not practiced.
Right.
So,
I think being around on a set is going to be huge help.
It could be.
You can see how the director does it. a lot of things, you probably notice this in life, but a lot of times you see someone doing something and you think, maybe not in an arrogant way, but you think, I could do that better. I can figure this out and actually do a better job. Because I have a passion for the thing, you know?
That's less often my response than, oh, that's how they do it.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't look at someone else, how they do something and think, I can do it better. I think
That's
maybe I can mix some of that into what I'm already doing.
Right.
That'll make what I'm doing better.
Yeah.
Because if I try to do what they're doing, that's like the saying, you can't out Bob.
Right.
Like,
right.
Bob is Bob. If you try to be Bob, he's going to be better at it than you are. Because that's who he is.
Yeah.
But if I take a couple of things that Bob does, because I've seen that they worked,
right.
I try to mix them in with how I do things. Now I'm learning from them.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess maybe not do it better, but I think what I mean is, like, I can take this knowledge and put my spin on it. Like this podcast, for example. There's a lot of podcasts that I love and I admire. And I'm not trying to be better than them, but I've got my own unique way to do a podcast and to do an interview, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it was something I discovered just by doing it, you know?
So actually, I have a question for you. I want to know, why did you start this podcast? Like, what did it look like to you before you had done an episode?
Yeah, so that's a great story. So what I've started doing is every 20, 30 episodes, I have someone interview me. Because a few people have requested it, and I thought, why not? So I published the first one a couple of weeks ago. You can find it. And they asked that question. But I'll tell you briefly. When I was living in the Cayman Islands in 2005, I got the chance to be on a morning show on the radio with my two best friends. And I was totally introverted. Didn't know how to do public speaking or anything. But because we were drinking buddies and we had a great sense of humor, we hit it off. And it was a great, very popular morning show. And I said from the beginning, I want to have my own radio show. And they said, well, you can't. You don't have any experience. Like, forget it. But within 4 months, I managed to get my own lunchtime show. And my ex and I broke up. And we had a daughter together who's now 14 and a half. She moved to Edmonton, so I was flying between Cayman and Edmonton, and I couldn't, they said you can't have a regular time slot on the radio because you're gone. So it was in 2006 that I learned about podcasting, and I started a podcast. And it was about being a single dad, dating life, relationships, you know, meeting women, like all kinds of stuff that I was interested in. And I quit it in 2009 to start the nightclub, which was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made. Like, I don't regret it because I learned so much about the bar business and the music business, but I lost a ton of money. And at that time, my podcast was getting 3,000 unique downloads. And this is in 2007, 2008. So per episode, like 3,000 unique downloads. It was probably just about to go parabolic. Like, you know, was increasing by the hundreds every show. And I could see on Google there were people in Afghanistan and Iraq listening to the show. And I thought, I don't think the Muslim people are listening about dating advice. But it was American, Canadian, British soldiers that were over there. And they were sending me emails and saying, hey, what do I, got my wife back home. What do I do with this? And what do I do with that? And I would look up information and I would try to give an answer, So much fun. Anyways, went through a big period where I didn't do anything. And I actually dated a woman who was a radio kind of star down in the Kootenays. And, but she was not a very nice person. And she would harshly criticize me. And we tried to do a little radio show, Nelson. She's like, you suck, you're terrible. So I really lost all my confidence. But I had a dream to start a podcast again. And hang on a second. And then started asking them to nominate other people. And so I think that's just great. So I don't do any hard selling of real estate. But hopefully someone in Vancouver, hears this and says, well, Luke knows everybody in Kelowna. So I want to buy a house and that's it. But I just love doing it, learning from people like you, right? I find it fascinating. And I haven't made any money yet. I haven't monetized it. But to me, it's just great to be able to meet people and to pick your brain, about audio or whatever the topic is. I mean, we've had, venture capitalist guys raising $5 million for tech startup. And I'm like, how do you get $5 million? How does that happen? And they tell you all about it. Most people are willing to tell you everything they know. So to me, it's awesome. So much fun.
That is really cool. I love that. Becoming the expert on the city just by getting to know people and what interests them. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think the name is perfect because it's like, that's the only thing every show, as Kara told you, it's the only thing every show has in common is love of this city. But we're all different. We're all doing different things, totally different things. We go to vineyards and interview the people there, and they talk about the land and the soil conditions and the climate and how to make a good wine, what makes a good wine versus a crappy wine. It's got nothing to do with audio, right? Or it's got a little bit to do with real estate, but it's like, it's just great. I've learned so much in the last year that I've been doing this. And I think we started like late June 2018. So coming up a 1-year anniversary.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
I love this. This is amazing. I'm definitely going to listen to a few of these episodes just to kind of get like a broader idea of the city, because that's totally true. Every time that I meet someone new and I get to know them a little bit, they've gotten to know the city from an angle that I've never done from.
Right.
There's a few stereotypical poster board things that show up on like tourism boards, but
yes,
if you actually live here and you kind of get to know it on a day-to-day basis, like there's too much going on to know all of it.
That's right.
Far too much.
Yeah. And that's why I always like to start with that question, like, tell us the story I got here. I mean, I've got 138 different stories now. One woman, she's a psychic. She helps people to, gain intuition and stuff. And she said she kept having dreams and visions about Kelowna. She was living in Ontario, small town Ontario, and she kept dreaming about Kelowna. Other people said, my boss said, that's where you got to go or we're transferring you. So there's all kinds of stories. A young couple, they wanted to be in the food business. They wanted to buy a house together, but there was nothing affordable on the coast. So they started looking around and they said, oh, Kelowna looks interesting. So they moved up here and bought a house. So everybody's got a story of how they got to Kelowna. You went to school, right? So I think it's just a great topic because most people are not from here. About 5 or 6 of the people I've interviewed were born and raised here. But everybody else came from somewhere else, like yourself. So
that's so interesting.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, this is a really neat place. I've heard of quite a few people that came here on a visit for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to...
Exactly. Yeah.
In my case, I'd forgotten about what it was like here. Like the last time that I'd been here before I moved here was about 4 years earlier. And it was for just a very short family visit.
Right.
I never actually looked around it and thought, oh, this could be home. And that wasn't even on my mind.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, some people reluctantly came, and some people just came for a business trip, and they said, geez, I would love to live here. So many great stories. But, so you're excited to be on the film set?
Mm-hmm.
And how long is it going to take to produce this film?
I have no idea. I'm only on for 2 days. Like they've been shooting for weeks.
So I see.
Yeah, it started on May 6th. It's been going for...
Did somebody get sick, or how did you...
So most of the crew is actually from Vancouver. Okay. So I guess some people weren't available. Some of the crew joined a week ago. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of a bit of a turnover. It's much more like an actual construction site in some ways, like bigger sets, because a lot of the roles have very clearly defined skill sets, and you know who you... I'm only listening to the guy right above me. The film industry is a very clear hierarchy, so you only need to know what the person ahead of you is going to tell you. Right. Other things are helpful too, but you could just jump in if you have the right skill set to any film set and just pick up wherever the last guy left off.
Right.
So there's actually something called above the line. I recently learned this term. The people who are above the line are the ones who, if they weren't there, the final product would be different. So a director is above the line. A lead actor or lead actress is above the line. Like, what if a movie started with Brad Pitt in it and then halfway through he quit? The whole product would be different. So he's above the line. Right. People who are below the line, they can shift in and out. It can be anyone doing those jobs, and it doesn't actually make
extras.
Extras, or even like catering. catering, you can fire a caterer and get new catering halfway through. That's not going to change the final outcome. So those people are below the line.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of the way it is. So anyone who's below the line, you can change them in and out.
Right.
You can change. Sometimes you can change the camera operator. Sometimes you can change like the guy who's setting up lights, but not the person who's designing lights.
Right.
Like if a movie went from being very dark and like DC comic universe to suddenly very happy and crazy and a bit Tim Burton, it might be like, who is designing this halfway through? It suddenly went all weird. Like that kind of stuff.
And sometimes there's an accidental death or someone dies of old age. So I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show Mad Men. It's one of my favorite TV shows of all time. But one of the lead actors died. Went for 8 seasons, I believe. And he died somewhere during season 6, but he was like a senior partner in this firm. So they wrote the script around it.
Okay.
Another example, Suits. One of the lead actresses married the Prince of England, so they had to write her out of the script. Mm-hmm. And
I stopped watching that at season 6.
I stopped watching it because, I don't know if you noticed, but between Mike and what's her name? What was her name? The princess.
Her real name's Meghan Markle.
Yeah. So they it was really weird. Once she started dating Prince Harry, she stopped kissing Mike on the lips during the show.
I
was like,
that.
So great to see you. I haven't seen you in a week. And it would be like this really tame, kind of brush on the cheek type of thing. And I'm like, you can just tell that
something's different.
Yeah, they've got a distance and they're trying to fake it. And I don't know. The show kind of went down after that, in my opinion. It's not the same without Mike. You gotta have Mike.
It's not.
Rachel.
Rachel, that's the name. I'm not going to give any spoilers, and I've actually not even seen the last season, but just for a real quick section, Game of Thrones. There's 2 actors that used to date. And they very subtly wrote it in so that one of them always leaves before the other one enters in any of the scenes, so that they're never on set together.
Wow.
But they actually wrote the script around their dating history.
Yeah. That's a little
I thought
weird.
that was pretty funny.
Yeah. I don't know. Kind of bugs me because you as the viewer, you kind of want to be immersed in that world and you don't want to think about outside stuff. And that just bugged me. Like, they wouldn't kiss. I don't need to see people kiss, but it was obvious that this woman is in love with somebody else. You know what I mean? It was just obvious. And it's like, I got to think about the Prince of England now when I'm trying to watch Suits, and I don't know, found it very irritating. Same way, like when actors get really political and they want to talk about Donald Trump or United States and stuff like that, it ruins the movie for me. Because now I think that's just that jackass who's angry all the time. You know what I mean? I'm not watching a movie anymore. It kind of spoils it for me. I don't know. Have you ever had that experience?
Not very much. But also, I don't really follow a lot of these Hollywood people outside of movies.
Right.
Like, I can barely remember any actors' names.
Right.
Off the top of my head, I could probably pull out like 5 names, and given an hour, maybe another 5.
Yeah.
I'm hopeless with actors' names.
Right.
I remember other weird details instead.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you? What's your favorite TV shows or movies?
I don't actually watch that many because. Okay, so I have played like a gaming console once in 10 years.
Okay.
I barely do things like that. If I'm not working, I'm doing things that are basically work, but for fun. Like when I'm not shooting a video for work, I'm going to go bring my camera out someplace and do a photo shoot or shoot a dumb video just for my own fun.
That's awesome. That's how you're going to get really great.
I love doing this stuff. Like, I really love doing it. And like, if I'm bored, I'll go think of a funny story or like script out a bunch of ideas. And I have my rule is 10 shitty ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I took this is my own version of Seth Godin's rule. Seth Godin, you ever?
Yes, so, definitely.
He was saying that some people say, "Oh, I don't have any ideas. I don't have any like scripts, or I don't have any business plans." And he said, "Well, where are all your bad ones? You don't get any good ones without any bad ones first."
That's right.
Like, people who have good ideas have a lot of bad ideas.
That's right, because it's like practice.
Yeah, like I found that if I follow my rule of write down 10 have to be bad ideas.
Yeah.
Like, they have to suck. If they sound good, make them suck. I just have to write down 10 shitty ideas.
Right.
And then that process has got my mind working. But it's like, okay, I've gotten 10. These are awful. if I read these out to anyone, they'd look at me like I've got a cabbage on my neck.
Right.
And now we can go from there.
Right.
So it just gets me into that
Yeah,
mindset.
it's actually a muscle. There's a guy I love, James Altucher. He's a podcast I listen to a lot. And his story was similar to mine, where he made a bunch of money and he lost everything. He had his house foreclosed on and stuff like that. And I really liked that because it was inspirational to me. I mean, in a way that ordinary rags to riches stories couldn't be. Because, like, you look at Oprah Winfrey, for example, she was extremely poor and now she's extremely wealthy. And you think, well, she can't relate to me. She didn't have $1 million and lose everything and lose her house. Like, she would think I'm an idiot. She figured things out and she got from here to there. But James Altucher actually went through the up and down that I did. And he has a similar take on that, like Seth Godin. And he says what he does every day as a brain exercise, write down 10 ideas. And most of them will be crap, especially at the beginning. And he said when over time he gets a good idea, and he's like, hey, this is a really good idea, then he will do 10 sub-ideas. So, for example, I would like to do a documentary on X. So then, what are 10 ways you could get that started? Who are 10 people you could call?
Okay.
Right? What are 10 books you could read to get you the skills you need? Right? So you do 10 sub-ideas. But every day he writes down 10 things. And he said when he felt like a loser, he would write 10 ideas down for Amazon. And he would say, here's how Amazon could improve as a company. He would send the letter. He'd actually get it posted to him, send the letter. And he said 99 times out of 100, nothing would happen. But he said as he started to get good at it, companies would start to call him and say, hey, these are some good ideas. We want you to come in and consult for us. We want you to come and talk or give a speech to our staff. But because he does this 7 days a week, 10 ideas every single day, he writes them down. And it's a muscle, he says. And you just become really great at ideas by becoming bad, by starting off being bad, but doing it as a habit. It's like anything, riding a bike, throwing a baseball. You got to throw it 1,000,000 times before you can actually throw a strike, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that idea. I'm definitely going to adopt that as well. Thank you for
so you're already
10
doing
ideas.
Yeah, 10 sub-ideas. You're like, this one's really good. You can't get it out of your head because you're like, that's a good one. Mm-hmm. Then you can branch off, right? So, and you will get more and more good ideas. And then, like you said earlier, you have to gain the skill of being able to say no. Because once you get really good at it, you have too many options. Mm-hmm. Too many options. And too many people that want to hire you or, get you to do something because you're great at what you do. So you got to learn how to say no.
Yeah, the people who become great at anything have said no to a lot of good things.
Yes.
There's one thing, I love this. I heard it from a guy. It was the devastating power of focus.
Mm.
You think about a car tire, how it can support the weight of the entire vehicle.
Yeah.
But if it rolls over a nail, all that weight, which was spread out, goes into one point, and all of a sudden crazy things happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like amazing what someone can do if they put all their focus into one thing versus being spread into 1,000 directions.
So true.
I know that's like the worst advice ever to give to a new parent. They're like, you have no idea how many things are going on.
Yeah.
But it's pretty crazy though what you can do if you focus all those things on one topic. And actually, it doesn't even have to necessarily be one thing that you're doing. It could be one topic that you're doing. Lots of things within.
Right.
So I mentioned that I did audio for a while. I'm actively saying no to any and all things like any of those events or jobs so that I can only say yes to things that have to do with filming.
Right.
Even if it's like, I said yes to this movie thing, I'm not trying to get on Hollywood film sets.
Right.
But I learned so much in that 13-hour day. Like so many things that I just would not have learned unless I'd been exposed to it in person. I had all day to ask questions and it was amazing. And I get today all day to ask questions. And
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah. That's cool. What's the director like? What's the personality like?
I don't want to say too much about it.
Okay. We always hear stories about Hollywood.
From what I can tell, people are not on set for the director. They're on the set for someone else.
I see.
The higher-ups give work to the people who are trying to get work.
Right.
Like basically, what happens is, for example, the DOP, that's the film terminology for director of photography. That's the person who decides where the camera's pointing and what's in frame.
Okay.
They're the director of the photography camera points. They're going to need someone to point to run the camera for them, or they're going to need someone to be the assistant to the camera. If they worked really well on like a multi-week project, well, I worked great with that guy. Let's bring him to the next one.
Right.
So that's how
Makes
that keeps
sense.
going. So if you do really well on one set, that is your resume. Whatever your last job was is your resume. So that's why people are on the set. They're here for someone else that's on set.
Yeah.
It's been a really good experience. But yeah, I have not spoken with the director. There's a very clear chain of command, and you speak with the person above you, and they speak with the person above them. Because if everyone goes to the director, nothing happens.
Can't get anything done.
Nothing happens at all.
Is the director the boss of the director of photography? Ultimately?
Usually, yes. They're either... They'll have certain things that they'll make an executive decision on, but for the most part, the director can overrule anything.
Right. But a good director will let people use their strengths.
Ideally, yes. Just like in anything, you put people into position because they're good at something, and you have to at some point let go and trust them to do what they're going to do the best they possibly can.
Right. So the director may say, listen, we're really trying to capture the frustration on his face in this angle. So you know.
Yeah. Like they might give
this is what we're trying to accomplish in them. The director of photography will set it up.
It's so much more helpful to tell someone what we're trying to do than how to do it.
Right.
Like to trust someone to do something the way that you know that they're going to do it. Like, hey, I hired you because you're good at building sets. I'm not going to tell you how to paint the thing that's in the background because I trust you that you're good at it. So just go do it. This is what we're trying to do. Go build something that'll do that.
Right.
It's really beautiful to work with sets, work with teams and crews that can work like that.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I covered everything I wanted to, but this is for me. This is a conversation that we could continue for hours because it sounds like we like a lot of the same books and same topics, you know. And I'm sure we could learn from each other. So you're always welcome back anytime you want to come back.
Cool.
And I would like, as a favor, I'd like to send you some links to some audio equipment that I'm looking at for this show. You tell me what you think.
Sure.
And then if I go and buy it, then maybe we can spend an hour.
Setting it up, testing it out.
Yeah. Buy lunch and, you know, just come over and we'll get it set up. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we can do that.
I've dealt with three different students from your former school that helped, but it's all through email. You know, so I send them the audio file. They'll edit it. I did a little commercial for my real estate business. I hired an American voice actress. Cost me about $200. She read the script. So it's pretty cool. There's a website called voices.com where you can do any kind of voice work. And so I put the script, and then you get auditions, and you just click on it, and you hear she was the only one who pronounced my last name and the city of Kelowna correctly on the first try. Amazing. So I was like, you're hired. That was it. It was like $180 or something. And then I put a little music bed on it, and it's just like, you know, Luke is a realtor. He loves what he does. Well, it's just a little commercial. So, so the student would, you know, insert the commercial. I've started to do it at the end because I thought in the middle, every single time, it's the exact same commercial. You want to listen to it, you can listen to it. It's at the end. And then just adjust the volume between the two of us and, you know, any blips in the sound, equalization, and then send me the file back. And like I said, after 3-4 times, they're like, oh, sorry, I got busy. But this is the first time I've actually met someone in person from the school and been able to talk about it. So,
well, I'm happy to help you with that, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, it definitely makes it easier to, as a listener, to listen all the way through if it sounds good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm often listening to podcasts in the car. So it needs to sound clear and close and not like it's in an echoey room so that I can hear it over the road noise.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, the closer it is to a nice, even, clean sound, the more likely everyone's going to hear it all through. Yeah,
makes sense. Totally makes sense. Well, Nathan, who would you like to nominate to come on the show?
I would like to nominate 2 people, actually. I'd like to nominate Meredith Sherman.
Okay.
Eredeth. And then Sherman is SEH2USRMAN. And also Ben Ward.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about Meredith.
Meredith was one of my instructors at Cato. Cato is the short version of Center for Arts and Technology Okanagan. She taught the music theory, and she also taught the audio for film or the post-production. We
Wonderful.
actually watched movies in class and would pick them apart.
Yeah.
And she's moved away from that, but she's a bass player. She's a businesswoman. She was like a killer in the boardroom, and she now works with Fresh Grade, helping teachers teach better.
Yeah.
She loves the outdoors.
We interviewed somebody from Fresh Grade.
You what, sorry?
We interviewed somebody from Fresh Grade.
Oh, really?
Or somebody who helped start it.
Okay.
Forget his name, but it was like 50 episodes back.
Wow.
But yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to talk to her.
Yeah, she's a fantastic lady. Good friend of mine. And Ben Ward he was born and raised here, but he was a heavy machine operator for a while. And now he's ever since he was a kid, he's loved planes.
Yeah.
So he's got his aviation license, or his flying license just in the last couple of months.
Nice.
He's heavily involved with the flying club, and Copa for Kids is coming up very soon as well. So he's totally passionate about all that stuff. Really interesting guy. Just, yeah, really, really into whatever he's doing.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's fabulous. So Nathan, thanks again for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Luke.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Newtown Big Dreams podcast with your host, Luke Menkes, and his authentic guests. And we love our listeners and hope you subscribe now to learn more about the amazing journeys of our incredible guests who relocated to find a new town, big dreams. And remember, make your dreams big.